Welcome to The Explainer. So today we are diving into a really fascinating and, honestly, pretty forgotten story from French colonial Algeria. This isn't your typical history of just conquest. No, it's about this incredible utopian vision, this dream of uniting two completely different peoples, and how that dream just spectacularly crashed into the brutal reality of what an empire really is.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The French presence in Algeria, it didn't start with some big master plan. Not at all. It was way messier. It all began with a series of treaties, especially with the famous resistance leader Emir Abdelkader. And this quote from the historian Charles Robert Adron, it just nails it. He says it was this inextricable mix of naivete and bad faith. Basically, a tangled web of good intentions and, well, outright lie.
So this first decade, from 1830 onwards, it really set the stage for everything that followed. You've got the French invasion, right? But then they get locked into this long, drawn-out conflict with Abdelkader. So what do? They turn to diplomacy. They sign these treaties, like the Treaty of Dismissals and the Treaty of Tafna. But here's the thing. These were anything but straightforward peace deals.
Okay, and this is where it gets absolutely wild. We're talking serious double-dealing here. There wasn't just one treaty. No, there were two. You had the official one, in French, that was sent back to Paris, but then the French General Desmichelles signed a second, secret version, only in Arabic. And this secret version? It gave Abdelkader a total monopoly on trade and, get this, the right to buy French weapons. I mean, think about that. France was actively helping its main opponent build up a powerful modern state, all while lying to its own government about it. Just incredible.
So, right in the middle of all this violence, all this cynical political maneuvering, something completely unexpected happens. A new idea emerges, and it's brought by a group of thinkers, and especially one man, who had a totally different, you could even say radical, vision for what Algeria could be.
So what was this big idea? Well, it came from this really influential early socialist philosophy called Saint-Simonianism. And these guys, they weren't your typical political thinkers. They were almost like a utopian cult. They truly believed that technology, science, and industry were the keys to uniting all of humanity. Their ultimate goal was this grand, universal association of all peoples, a way to finally bridge the gap between the East and the West.
A lot of what we know about this whole period, by the way, comes from the work of historians like Charles Robert Agron. But the person who actually lived this utopian dream, the one who tried to make it happen, that was a man named Ismail Urbain. And his life story, well, it's pretty incredible. It's like he was born to be this bridge between two completely different worlds.
I mean, just look at this quote. He said he entered life with a double stain. And what he meant by that was he was the mixed-race, illegitimate son of a French merchant and a freed black woman from Cayenne in South America. He was born on the absolute fringes of the colonial system. So for him, the injustices of empire weren't some abstract idea. He lived it. He felt it every single day. And that perspective, as you can imagine, is going to shape everything he does. So Urbain finds his way to Paris, gets involved with the Saint-Simonians, and then his life takes this huge turn. He travels to Egypt, and he's so taken with the culture and the religion that he actually converts to Islam. You can kind of see on this table how the whole Saint-Simonian movement was evolving, right? From just focusing on France to this grand mission in the East. For Urbain, this was it. He saw French-occupied Algeria as the perfect place, a real-life laboratory, to try and make this dream of uniting East and West finally happen.
So in 1837, Urbain arrives in Algeria. He gets a job as an interpreter for the French army, which means he's thrown right into the deep end, smack in the middle of the conflict. And what he sees there, the sheer brutality of the war being waged by the French, it absolutely horrifies him. And this quote? Wow. One does not civilize by flame. It just says it all, doesn't it? This came after he personally witnessed French troops attacking and destroying Abdelkader's massive mobile camp and capturing thousands of people, mostly women and children. That was the moment he knew. He was totally convinced that you couldn't build anything real or lasting with pure violence. And that conviction, it's what pushed him to come up with a completely different plan.
So he comes up with this policy he called association. And this is really important. The goal was not assimilation. It wasn't about turning Algerians into French people. No, the idea was that France should act more like a protector, that it should govern for the benefit of the Algerians, respecting their culture, their religion, their laws. It was a vision of two civilizations coexisting, creating a shared future based on mutual recognition. Pretty radical for the time.
And here's the crazy part. His ideas actually got heard, and not just by anyone, but by the most powerful man in France, Emperor Napoleon III. Turns out the emperor was personally fascinated with the Arab world, and he loved Urbain's ideas. So in the 1860s, he makes it official policy. He starts talking about his vision for an Algerian Arab kingdom connected to France. For a brief, shining moment, it looked like Urbain's utopian dream was actually going to happen. Okay, so this law, the Senatus Consult of 1863, was a huge test of this new policy. And on the surface, it looked like a win for Urbain. The law officially recognized that the land belonged to the Algerian tribes, which was meant to stop it from just being stolen. Great, right? Well, here's the catch. The law also demanded that all that communally owned tribal land be broken up into tiny individual private plots. And the result of that? It was a disaster. It completely shattered the social structure of the tribes and, ironically, made it super easy for European speculators to just swoop in and buy up the land piece by painful piece. And that really brings us to the core conflict of this whole story. You've got Urbain's grand vision, backed by the emperor way over in Paris, but on the ground, in Algeria itself, he was up against a powerful, dug-in opposition, the French settlers, also known as the colons.
And this comparison just lays it all out crystal clear. It was a clash between two completely incompatible futures for Algeria. You had Urbain's dream of association and coexistence, and then you had the settler vision, a future of assimilation or just flat-out expulsion, of confiscating land for Europeans and imposing French law on everyone. One was about partnership, the other was about pure domination.
This whole conflict really boiled over with another law in 1865. It created what historians have called a juridical monstrosity, a legal nightmare. Here's what it did. It said native Algerians were French subjects. But, and this is a huge but, they weren't French citizens. And the only way for a Muslim Algerian to become a citizen with full rights was to publicly renounce their Muslim identity. It was a cruel, impossible choice, and it basically created a system where the native people were treated like foreigners in the land where they were born.
You can just feel the heartbreak and bitterness in Urbain's words here. For him, this was it. The dream was dead. The Arab kingdom, he said, was just a mirage. He knew that the powerful settler lobby had managed to, as he put it, kill it in the egg. Their vision of conquest had won. So the dream is already dying. But the final nail in the coffin, it didn't even come from Algeria. The final fatal blow was delivered hundreds of miles away on a battlefield in Europe. In 1870, France gets crushed in the Franco-Prussian War. Emperor Napoleon III is captured, and his whole empire collapses. And just like that, Ismail Urbain loses his one and only powerful supporter. Back in Algeria, the settlers wasted no time. As you can see, a flood of new laws came in. The Warnier Law made it even easier to seize land. And then came the notorious Code de l'Indigénat, which basically set up a formal legal system of inequality. The dream was officially over.
And what about Ismail Urbain himself? Well, he spent his last years back in Algiers, but he was like a ghost. Politically, he was totally irrelevant. His personal life was also filled with tragedy. He lost his family. And he just had to sit there and watch as every single thing he had ever worked for was torn down. When he finally died in 1884, he was a forgotten figure. No government officials even came to his funeral. A man who spent his life trying to build a bridge between two worlds ended up completely alone, abandoned by both.
But here's the thing. Even though he died in obscurity, his ideas, they didn't completely disappear. In one of his very last articles, he wrote this, and it's so powerful. We will only be great if we know how to recognize in the Arab a citizen in the making, and not an eternal vassal. He's arguing that true greatness isn't about power or conquest, it's about justice. And that's a message that definitely outlived him. So the story of Ismail Urbain, it's a complicated one. It doesn't really give us any easy answers. But it absolutely forces us to grapple with this huge question. Can an empire, can any powerful nation, ever truly build something based on mutual understanding? Or, when you strip everything else away, is it always just a matter of force? It's something to think about. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.